Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's actually start with some big mark action here because I just want to get a lot of preliminary stuff out of the way because, as you guys know, tomorrow is actually the Apple event introducing the iPhone 17, 17 Air, 17 Pro, 17 Pro Max, AirPods Pro 3, Apple Watch SE, Apple Watch Ultra 3, Apple Watch Series 11. So, plenty of stuff, potentially an M5 iPad Pro if Apple might not be in the mood for an October release this year because maybe there won't be new Macs. That being all said, I did not expect to be streaming today because I thought, well, nothing leaked on Saturday really that much, or on Sunday especially. So yeah, I guess I'll take the Monday off and just be fully prepared, fully energetic for Tuesday. Now, I should note, it's not that everything has leaked, but a crucial part of the iPhone 17 story has leaked, and one that I actually think is very much worth discussing, because I also think it's going to be really interesting to analyze this, how Apple advertises this. So I really, really want to speak about it all. We already have plenty of people in chat. Riley saying, I was going to avoid leaks till the release, but oh well. Well, I got you, Riley, and hi. I also posted some Discord membership stuff here and some Patreon stuff in the links. Just preparing myself for stuff I'm going to do tomorrow as well. We also have Angelica in the chat saying it's on in 3 minutes. Well, it's already on now. And we have Rosa in the chat. Hello to everyone, to all regular viewers, to all new viewers. Hopefully we'll have some new viewers over tomorrow, the day after that. I'll hope to be streaming daily between now and Thursday. And then I have some mild weekend plans, so I might be back either on Saturday or on Sunday. And then, of course, I'll be streaming at the worst once my iPhone releases. I do have quite the busy week next week. Well, next week. But I'll hope to be able to stream when my iPhone arrives and stuff like that. So if you're enjoying this or my content in general, subscribe, like, share, comment, send a super chat or super sticker. I see Max leaving a chat membership milestone, a member for 14 months. Thank you so much. Saying, didn't expect to stream some workout material. Well, I'm glad to be providing some workout material for you, Max. And yeah, you can also subscribe here and become a channel member. Shout out to Max, Angelica, Steve, and Jonathan. And you can also become a supporter over on Patreon. Shout out to Ben Veni. These are all our Mark Tech Pro Max, our highest tier level supporters. We also have Nathan rejoining chat. I actually saw you briefly in last stream's chat. So thank you very much for returning. I remember you from like the M4 Mac event. So hey, who knows if in a surprising twist the M5 iPad comes along tomorrow, we might have a lot more stuff to talk about than I initially expected. And I think now I can actually shrink myself down. Now that we have all the intro yapping out of the way, we can actually move on to something really, really substantial. We can actually analyze this at Mac Rumors or from the original source. But the big leak today is that we now know the battery capacities of the entire iPhone 17 series. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this means iPhone 17, 17 Air, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max. Nathan, I'm doing quite well. I'm actually a little bit tired because, again, I did not expect to have to make a stream today, but I was really, really excited by this news. So I really thought they pulled me back in, right? And how did they pull me back in? Well, with some data from a Chinese regulatory database. So yes, this is pretty much official and confirmed. And this also disproves some of the bad leaks by some carrier, which was not a leak. It was just some stupid rumor aggregation by a carrier who clearly had no inside knowledge, didn't prevent a ton of other reviewers to treat it as some super high-level source. I understand covering it, don't get me wrong. I cover smaller sources too. I cover less credible sources too. but I tell you literally every single time to take these kinds of leaks with a grain of salt. When I tell you that this is a leak that you should take with a tiny bit of salt, then you know that this is actually a leak very much worth listening to. Because usually my commentary is like, unless it's Mark Gurman, unless it's Ming-Chi Kuo, previously, unless it was Ross Young, who unfortunately is now retired, I was telling you to take basically everything with salt. Your sodium intake, because of me, is insane. I apologize to your cardiologist because of that. But this is actually something close to a confirmation. And boy, oh boy, Chinese leak sources, whether it's from logistics and from the production pipeline or from a database like this. So there is some internal consistency and logic here. It's not a leaker that is known for something entirely else now leaking on this. Let's actually get through the individual leaks. Let's start very basically with the iPhone 17, which is going to be the direct successor of the iPhone 16. That one has a 3692 milliamp hour battery. Now, that does not sound like too much, obviously, when you compare it to some of the 6,000, 7,000 milliamp hour behemoths. But I also remind you to not forget that the base iPhone 16 has 3561 milliamp hours. So this is a solid improvement of almost 150 milliamp hours, roughly a 4% increase, like 3.7 or something like that. While that isn't crazy, the reason why I'm actually treating this almost like as the little standout, we'll get to the true standout, don't fret it, is because I kind of almost didn't believe Apple would increase battery capacity on the base level iPhone. For one, the iPhone 16 already has pretty good battery life. Supposedly the 17 uses an LTPO panel, which means it kind of averages out. It supports higher refresh rate, but it also supports variable refresh rate. It's also a more efficient technology in general. It uses the base A19, not like the A19 Pro, so there's plenty that Apple can do with efficiency tuning. The reason why I'm surprised that this one is getting a larger battery is because of the existence of the 17 Air. Because, and we'll get to why this one doesn't look too bad, thankfully, in comparison to how we thought it might look. But I thought Apple would refrain from making the base iPhone 17 look too good in the battery department versus the 17 Air. And obviously having like 20% more battery on a device with a smaller display is likely to result in the base iPhone 17 to have like 25 to 30% longer battery life than the 17 Air. So if you are somebody who is really interested in the base model, to be quite honest, the only downside to the base model this year, I would argue, is going to be the lack of more memory, right? Sure, storage too, but I mean, you can buy more. It's not going to make it the best value ever if you go to 256 or especially to 512 gigabytes, but at least you can get it. Unfortunately, the iPhone 17 is going to be limited to 8 gigabytes of memory. I actually don't think that the base A19 chip is going to hold anyone back in the usage of this device. But I think devices with more memory are more likely to get more demanding, more powerful AI workflows. However, and large language models. However, if you're not really interested in that, honestly, I think that even with this small battery capacity increase, which is roughly 3.7%, I think you're quite golden. Don't forget, this device is also getting Apple's new Wi-Fi modem. And a part of why Apple is designing their own modems is to make them more efficient. Yes, the iPhone 17 Air is supposedly the only device in the lineup with a C1 5G modem in-house from Apple. But honestly, I think the combination of a pretty modern Qualcomm modem and Apple's in-house Wi-Fi modem and larger batteries and a chip based on N3P and an LTPO panel is going to make this device perform really, really well battery-wise. Ben, when you're saying, I see that Mark couldn't resist last-minute leaks. Yeah, I guess you weren't on Discord. Yeah, I was quite excited about this. 25 hours couldn't come soon enough. Let me actually check. Is it 25 hours? It's 1 day and 48 minutes. Yeah, it's less than 25 hours now, Benveni. And I guess the release candidate for iOS 26 is, that means it's probably releasing tomorrow, right? Right after the event, and then the official release just coincides with the iPhone 17 launch, or at least with the week, right? So that's the week where it supposedly is coming out on the 19th. So if it's coming on Tuesday, that would be like on the 16th or something like that. So hopefully Apple still has some time to refine a lot in iOS 26. But let's get back to the actual leak in question. Well, let's look at the 17 Air, because this is the dark sheep of the family in that regard. This is by far the lowest capacity in question, and this is on a product that has a larger screen, for example, than the base iPhone 17. Now, the iPhone 17 Air is using an supposedly a binned A19 Pro with 12 gigs of RAM. So it does have some advantages over the base iPhone 17. However, when we look at the battery capacity, this is when we are seeing the first discrepancy on the list, and something rather new and exciting, which is we actually have two battery capacities here in question. One for a device with a SIM card tray. This actually counters some previous leaks and rumors saying that the iPhone 17 Air would only come as an eSIM only product across the entire world. That capacity for an iPhone 17 Air with a SIM card tray comes out to 3,036 milliamp hours. This actually connects pretty well to previous leaks and rumors that said it would be around 3,000. We've had some that said 2,800, 2,900. I think a lot of that was honestly bullshit and just people trying to provide something more concrete than the roughly 3,000 that we've heard originally. And they basically threw some numbers against the wall. Now, when it comes to the iPhone 17 Air without a SIM card tray, so we are talking here about the model that's definitely coming to the United States, but in my opinion, it's also pretty likely that this model would expand to new markets, because when I look at Europe here, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, honestly, I see it as a really good opportunity for Apple to push eSIM only devices. Carriers like that, that's more likely for Apple to get beneficial carrier deals. And Apple likes it because they can say, look, we took out the SIM card tray, but hey, we gave you more battery. And I believe Mac Rumors actually calculated that, how much exactly more it has. Unfortunately, they did not. Oh, it's because it's not a year-over-year increase. So it's 3149 divided by 3036. Is it also a 3.7% increase? That's not a huge gain. Honestly, given the small size of the 17 Air, I am surprised that the SIM card tray is not a disproportionately larger issue, because some of these other gains are like closer to 5%. But then again, the 17 Air might just have so much going on inside to miniaturize technology so it can fit into such a small chassis that Apple couldn't do better than that. Mark, can we hope that all iPhone 18 lineup will come without SIM tray? Well, to me, the answer here is, honestly, now I don't care, right? Because if it becomes an option, let's say it's fully an option, right? So even in the West, you might still buy a phone with a SIM card tray. Or let's say it's a geographic option, which is that countries like China that have very much strong government oversight over their people, they want you to buy a regular SIM card. That SIM card is registered to your name, and whatever is happening from that SIM card, you're very much responsible for it, right? If they really want to, and Apple wants to adhere to those regulations, and then some markets like Africa might just not have the eSIM infrastructure, then I'm fine with having those devices. What I wasn't fine with, and you guys have heard me complaining about it ever since eSIM-only iPhones became a thing in the United States, what I wasn't fine with was Apple taking the SIM card tray away and doing nothing with that space. Like literally inside devices that don't have a SIM card tray is a dummy SIM card tray. It's just not something you can take in or out of the device. It's basically empty space that has a little bit of something that mimics roughly the weight of a regular SIM card tray. I think that way it's just easier for Apple, right? There's no extra battery there. There's no cooling capacity increase. Obviously, those devices don't have larger cameras or anything. Now, larger batteries was always the most likely lever to pull when it comes to differentiating devices with a physical SIM card tray and eSIM only devices. And I'm very glad that Apple is doing that. And yes, I think that over time, potentially if China actually relents and becomes more eSIM friendly, I do think that down the line we'll see more and more eSIM only devices from Apple across the entire globe. And I mean, it's not like they need to do that much, right? Like, for example, the iPhone 17, that's the base model. That's the model for everyone. That's the model where Apple wants to have the least amount of build complexity because it's the cheapest model. I know it's $800 for 128 gigabytes. Don't kill me. But it's literally the cheapest model Apple sells that isn't like a E, right? And let's be honest, while E models, they are Apple devices, I'm not going to deny it, but E models are designed to be highly, highly compromised, right? The iPhone 17 is the more likely device that people, especially in countries with a decent middle class, are just going to go in and buy. I know that. My niece got an iPhone 16 as a gift for her birthday, right? So just keep that, right? I don't care that there are no specific models of the base iPhone 17, right? Because I think that one is good enough as it is. I think even with 3550 milliamp hours, it still delivered decent battery life and stuff like that, right? But when it comes to the pros, where enthusiasts were really like, oh my God, can we please get more and more, especially if you're taking features out, right? And we'll get especially to this specific version, right? Where even a pretty small increase in thickness, potentially in heaviness, potentially with a change to the materials being used, will result in massive, massive differences to the user experience. So now that we have the 17 Air, roughly covered, right? I would also argue the actual question here is not even the difference between these two models. The actual difference the actual important thing for the 17 Air is, to be quite honest, is this going to be good enough? Even though it's barely a 4% difference, I would argue this might get really close to being enough. Especially since I think that the battery accessory, now mind you, it's very likely that that battery accessory is going to be compatible with all iPhones through MagSafe, right? We're not looking into something that's completely exclusive to the 17 Air. But I think that out of all these models, the model with the highest attachment rate, which means people who bought this model also bought the battery accessory, is going to be the 17 Air. If the battery adds roughly 2,000 milliamp hours and actually gives the 17 Air roughly the battery capacity of a 17 Pro Max, we'll also get, of course, to the numbers here. That I think, because obviously there's going to be some energy lost through the wireless charging, so it's going to be more like the battery actually of the 17 Pro in a way, especially on hot days where wireless charging really suffers. That honestly, I think is not going to be bad. But if you're coming from a Plus model and think that you can just effortlessly switch from a 15 Plus or a 16 Plus to the life on a 17 Air, I don't think you will be very satisfied. And I think if you're buying this for somebody who wants basically a base model but with a larger screen, I honestly think that you will disappoint that person. Quite honestly, think about it. This is a dual camera device. This is a single camera device. Even though this one might have a better main camera, right? Maybe a 1 over 1.28 inch sensor versus a 1 over 1.56 inch sensor. That's still two cameras versus one. Sure, this device has 12 gigs of RAM and an A19 Pro, but it's a binned A19 Pro. And let's be honest, if you save a little money, losing a little bit of memory probably won't probably won't piss you off that much. In terms of displays, there is actually a way smaller difference than you might think. This is the difference between 6.1 inches versus 6.7. That's a 0.6 inch difference. Here, we are moving from 6.3 inches to roughly 6.6, like maybe even like 6.56 rounded up or whatever, right? We're looking at half the difference in battery size. So honestly, and especially if some of the other rumored compromises turn out to be true, like the 17 Air, for example, not having a proper stereo speaker system, like not having bottom firing speakers, honestly, this will be the year where I'll tell basically everyone to just get the base model. Like maybe I, as an enthusiast, would have liked it to get 12 gigs of RAM, but there's a reason why the Pros exist. And to be quite honest, if you're unsatisfied with the base 17 Air, you might be more satisfied than you ever could have imagined with this year's Pro. Benveni saying, Mark, wake me up tomorrow already. Those leaks know how to hype up. Well, I hope I'm hyping you up too, but just I hope I'm actually hyping you up with some context rather than with numbers. Because that's what I often see with like Android devices saying like, oh, it's 7,000 milliamp hours. And I'm like, yeah, typical capacity. First of all, like with silicon carbon, I've really grown a little bit skeptical if maybe real capacity or minimum capacity has quite a bigger difference versus regular lithium ion batteries. Plus, like, is your operating system even optimized for it and stuff like that? While iOS 26 has a new AI assistant battery saving mode, Apple is building a battery accessory for the 17 Air. And again, if we are talking 3,000 milliamp hours, imagine combining that with one of the Pros suddenly. Plus, we know Apple is, especially on the Pros, going in with better cooling. So there is a lot to look forward to. And I'm not downplaying what Chinese devices have achieved when it comes to peak charging speeds and peak capacities. All of that is very exciting, and I cover a lot of this on this channel. But I'm trying to say it's never about the raw numbers. It's what those raw numbers deliver in the real world. And let's speak more about those raw numbers. Let's move back to Twitter. And now that we have the 17 Air and the base 17 out of the way, let's move up the pricing ladder. Unless the leaks are true that the 17 Air is going to be as costly as the 17 Pro, which I don't think is going to be true. But the 17 Pro actually gets a very, very interesting difference here. First of all, across the board, it has a much larger battery capacity than the previous 16 Pro. Previous 16 Pro came out at 3582 milliamp hours, while this one now comes in at 3988. So that's 400 milliamp hours more than even even in the comparison where we use the 17 Pro with the smaller battery, the model that has a physical SIM card tray. But then if you're using a physical SIM card tray, if you're getting rid of the physical SIM card tray, if you're willing to go eSIM only, or if you're in a market where that choice is pretty much taken away from you, you're now looking at 4,252 milliamp hours versus, again, a device that previously didn't even have 3,600. For the large model, we're looking here at an 18.7 and almost 19% difference when it comes to battery capacity. Yes, it's roughly half that improvement. Well, it's 2/3 of that improvement on the base model or on the physical SIM card tray model. There are now so many different terms that I have to keep in my head. Let me do the math here really quickly. I'm like that meme from South Park. It's like, I'm drinking Diet Double Dew. It only has half the caffeine of sugar of Double Dew that has like double the sugar and caffeine of regular Mountain Dew. Do the math. It's a very fun South Park episode with the zip lining. Can highly recommend. 3988 divided by 3582 comes out to an 11.33% difference in battery capacity. So even if you are in a market where SIMs are still obligatory, which I don't know if this will apply to me, to be quite honest. We know that these models will be in the United States, and I hope that they expand to markets like Europe. But there is a chance that my market, Germany, could still get the smaller battery capacities because maybe Apple does not deem Europe to be or at least Germany, not far along in our societal development to deal with devices without physical SIM card tray. Riley, the 17 Pro jump is huge. Yeah, because I mean, I have one theory here, and I'll get to that once I cover the 17 Pro Max. Ben Veni asking, where's Riley yapping? By the way, Riley, how the fuck are you the number one yapper today, even though Ben Veni has been yapping a lot more in the end? Guys, come on. I guess if one of you leaves a super chat, though, you will overtake the other pretty much automatically. Just saying. So, a hugely nice battery capacity increase. Now, the reason, again, why I'm focused on the raw numbers, because we already have a baseline of expectations based on these devices, right? And when we look, for example, at the iPhone 16 Pro, it shows me literally every iPhone model except the 16 Pro. When we look at the 16 Pro as it is, this one, display and battery life. Look, 14 hours in the endurance testing of GSM Arena, right? That's, again, with a 3582 milliamp hours. You saw how nicely it already scaled versus the 15 Pro, right? So it has about 10% more battery capacity. And that scales nicely in real-world battery life. But then you look at it against something like the Pixel 9 Pro, or now even the Pixel 10 Pro, which actually has a larger battery than this, and you will see it underperforming the 16 Pro. In fact, when we look at actually exactly at the Pixel 10 Pro, you will find that currently some software issues are turning its battery life into an absolutely unmeasurable disaster, because this measuring is just completely unpredictable. It underperforms by like 30% the Pixel 9 Pro, despite having a larger battery, 4870 versus 4700, and despite its main processor being moved from Samsung 4nm to TSMC second generation 3nm. So yes, the reason why I'm excited about raw numbers from Apple is because I know what Apple does with raw numbers, right? When I look at competition, look, so for example, I'll give credit to Samsung, right? For 4,000 milliamp hours, sure, is it as efficient as an iPhone 16 Pro? No, but it does have some other things going for it. It has a larger battery and stuff like that. This is is this a larger screen? No, the base S25 is the same. But even like the S25 Edge, for example, S25 Edge. Right, so that one comes to 3,900 milliamp hours, and well, sure, that's not the greatest battery life ever, but look, in terms of overall efficiency versus a device that has over 50% larger capacity, yeah, I would say that Samsung's optimization efforts definitely are paying off. This is why I'm trying to tell you, it's never about the raw numbers. Of course, raw numbers are important. If you tell me, do you want an iPhone with 5,000 milliamp hours or 10,000 milliamp hours, I would first ask, well, how much heavier is it now? But beyond that, I'm very likely to say yes, right? But when it comes to devices with different operating system, different skins even, different modems, Wi-Fi and 5G, obviously different processors, different generations of display, different display controllers, that's also something that's very often forgotten. When people try to say, oh, this is an LTPO panel, and that's what it can do because that's what LTPO panels can do, that's not true. When you look, for example, at the iPhone 14 Pro, which was Apple's first iPhone with an always-on display, it was, when it came out, the only LTPO panel that was capable of doing actual 1 Hz to 120 Hz refresh rate. A lot of panels that came out even a year after performed more like the iPhone 13 Pro, which had roughly between 10 hertz to 120 hertz adaptive refresh rate, right? And that wasn't because Apple was getting some completely special sauce from Samsung under the table. It was roughly because Apple had a better display controller and integrated it well in software. A lot of manufacturers even advertised 1 to 120 hertz adaptive refresh rate, but most took like 2 years to really make that true. So just again, raw numbers, first of all, there's a difference in how certain numbers are advertised. For example, there's a difference between typical capacity and minimum capacity. When it comes to batteries, usually typical capacity can be a little bit off in that regard, depending on your user experience. Now there's a difference between raw technologies for the underlying battery, whether we are talking standard lithium ion lithium polymer batteries versus silicon carbon with carbon cathodes. There is so much to consider, but the reason why I can be excited about raw numbers specifically for Apple here is because I know that Apple is giving a device with a more efficient chip, with a more efficient display, with a more efficient Wi-Fi modem, in the case of the 17 Air, with a more efficient 5G modem, more battery, and that's exciting. Riley saying, you're the number one yapper cause I said hi before stream by an hour. Oh, true, true, true. Ben Vinny saying, I'll stop the yapping to watch One Piece. Well, I mean, spoiler, Riley, they won't... oh, it's you, Ben Vinny, saying, you will stop the yapping to watch One Piece. Jesus. I was thinking that was Riley being... being his usual smart mouth, but I guess One Piece is more important. Spoiler, Benveni, they aren't finding the One Piece today. They're probably not finding it in the next 1,000 episodes if Oda has something to say about it. Unless his well, would the editors ever force Oda to actually finish One Piece? I think if it craters in popularity, or if Oda gets like sick and close to dying and they would force him to finish it so they could have like a triumphant last release. But that's obviously me now getting distracted. Now, coming to the last big numbers in question, the largest numbers here, in fact, I have the best numbers, the hugest numbers. Oh my God, my Trump has gotten so bad. I've been recently doing like more like Morgan Freeman impressions and stuff like that. My Trump's gotten really bad. It's like the hugest battery. It's in 17 Pro Max. It's now bigger than Samsung. A lot of people said Samsung is bigger, but now, no, iPhone 17 Pro Max. Now my voice is getting just normal. I apologize for this, guys. That's definitely something I need to apologize for. You sometimes write me like, oh, why are you apologizing? Like early in the videos when I point out that I've been on a hiatus for longer. Well, that's just how I was raised. I tend to say thank you and sorry. Sorry, I guess I should be Canadian. More than I probably should. But yeah, I probably really should have apologized for the Trump impersonation. But let's actually get to the good stuff. The 17 Pro Max, we have once again a dichotomy of different battery capacities to choose from. In this case, we have a physical SIM card tray model with 4823 milliampere hour battery and a model that is eSIM only. Again, the way people are talking about this, they're basically saying like this is basically the Chinese model and this is like the American model. Again, unfortunately, I cannot speak for other markets. We've had a leak before saying that multiple Western countries, especially in Europe, but also like Australia, are currently getting training at the Genius Bar for eSIM only devices. And a lot of people said, well, maybe it's only the 17 Air. But now, honestly, I think that would apply to the entire lineup. Benvin is saying, I think this German is broken. Wait, I'm not German, you know that. I'm Moldovan. I'm freaking Eastern European. I speak in literally every language that I speak it with a fucking accent. You know how annoying that is? Because my first language is Russian, which isn't even the purest Russian because it's a Russian spoken in Moldova. And I'm grateful for that because I hate the concept of pure languages, right? But then I left Moldova when I was really young still. So my German kind of piled onto my Russian to the point where it's leaps and bounds beyond that in like raw capacity. But my German has a small accent that doesn't sound at all like a typical Russian accent. And then my English is actually in many ways superior to my German because I consume all my media in English. And I now speak every language with an accent. So yeah, I am a bit broken. Thought you guys don't stuff like that. Okay. Let's get back to the 17 Pro Max before I completely lose my mind. So this is a battery capacity increase across the board for both the model with the physical SIM card tray and of course the eSIM only model versus the 16 Pro Max. However, in this specific case, we are looking at a smaller increase, right? So let's look at the physical model that's 4823, and that's versus the current capacity of 4685. That's actually just a 3% increase, a 2.945% increase. That makes sense, right? It's just basically 140 milliamp hours over a device that was already close to 5,000. But of course, the main leaks and rumors pointed for quite a long time now that the 17 Pro Max would have roughly a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, right? So kind of how we've had leaks about the 17 Air saying that one is a roughly 3,000 milliamp hour battery. We've had leaks saying, oh, the 17 Pro Max is actually gonna go up to 5,000. Well, it actually is moving past Samsung's, which is like just 5,000 raw. That's the typical capacity. It's more 4850 when it comes to minimum capacity. And we are looking at a roughly 8 to 9% increase in capacity year over year versus the 16 Pro Max. Now, some might point out, well, both Pros are getting thicker, right? Both Pros are most likely getting heavier. Both Pros are getting that two-tone metal and glass design. What's up with the battery gains on the 17 Pro being over double the size of the battery gains of the Pro Max? And in that regard, I only really have two speculations. One speculation is that the Pro Max might just have slightly different priorities. Maybe Apple thought we don't want to make this too heavy. We could, but we still want to retain some of the lightness that people associate with titanium devices. And maybe the base model, they just have survey data that's saying, while it is probably heavier than a lot of other devices in its size class, as long as it's not as heavy as a Pro Max, most people are probably just happy with its smaller size. So maybe they thought, oh, we can actually bring those devices a little bit closer together in that regard. The other is that there is one actually major difference in priority, and that is that the 17 Pro Max might, after all, get some exclusive camera functionality. And while unfortunately that has not yet been leaked, or it's not a leak that I have covered, we know, for example, that all pros are getting a 48 megapixel telephoto camera, right? But we've also heard rumors about variable aperture camera systems. Again, with unfortunately no real details on whether we are talking main camera, ultra-wide camera, telephoto. We've also heard rumors about a further than 5x zoom. We've specifically heard about an 8x zoom. With the different amount of zoom also came the rumor of variable zoom, right? Now we are talking about a potentially very, very different camera arrangement, right? Not only are you zooming in a lot further, which probably means you need more lenses for the periscope system, or more mirrors to be correct. Not everything will be a lens in there. But what if the 17 Pro Max just has a very, very different telephoto system, right? Let's say the underlying sensor in them is the same, right? 48 megapixel, slightly larger sensor, from a roughly 1/3 inches to a roughly 1/255 or something like that. That to me would make sense. But now consider if the Pro Max has variable zoom, going from 3x to like 8x, while this one stays at a fixed 5x. And with it also a variable aperture, because you kind of need a variable aperture for a variable zoom system on a camera system this small. That to me would actually explain why the Pro Max needs the extra space and therefore can have only an 8 to 9% increase in battery capacity versus the Pro that can have an almost 20% increase in battery capacity. Ben Vinny's saying the Pro's getting the perfect battery. If the Pro is that good, I would probably get it, or I would wait a bit for the 18 Pro. It's interesting, Riley, we often talk about waiting potentially. To be quite honest, I think this is a device that would encourage people to not wait. Right? Think about it. 18% increase in battery capacity. N3P, sure, that might not be a huge leap over N3E, but even over N3B on the 15 Pro, it's quite a nice leap. But then think about anybody who has like a 4 or 5 nanometer iPhone before that, right? We're talking about the A16 powered iPhone 14 series. We're talking about the A15 powered iPhone 13 series, right? Think about the fact that the 17 Pro would be the first 6.3-inch device for a lot of iPhone users, right? We only started getting 6.3 inches with the 16 Pro. Most likely, a lot of people updating to the 17 Pro would come from a 6.1-inch device. Or they might even downgrade from like a 6.7-inch device because maybe that was always too large for them, but simultaneously 6.1-inch devices had either too little battery or too small of a display, and now with 6.3 inches and a battery that gets close to the battery capacity of the previous Plus and Pro Max, well, maybe now these people would see that as a perfect, like a Goldilocks zone device, right? Not too big, not too small, not too compromised in battery, not too compromised in performance, especially we're talking vapor chamber designs, not too compromised in cameras. Even if the Pro Max gets like 1 or 2 exclusive camera features, I think most people would still be very satisfied. Riley saying, "Bro calls everyone Riley now, or I'm here too much." That's true, Riley. It's not true that you're on too much, but it's true that you disproportionately talk too much. But it doesn't mean that you should start talking less. It just means that everyone should start talking more. Benveni saying, "It's just that I have 16 Pro Max and I haven't even received the Smart Siri that they promised." Well, that one is coming supposedly next March or April. I think that in the last Mark Gurman reporting, right? He said that Apple answers, right? Like Apple's whatever is the closest to a chatbot, but basically it's just a smarter search engine, is coming in March, or at least it's being targeted for March. I mean, God knows if Meta keeps poaching Apple AI engineers. What's funny about the Mark Gurman reporting about poached Apple engineers, is that he never talks about if Apple is hiring new people, right? It just always sounds like Apple has like 20 people in the room and Mark Zuckerberg is like coming through the back door, and it's like basically alien style, like grabbing them and pushing them towards Meta, right? And then Tim Cook is like looking in the room and he's like, "Oh, where did another AI engineer go?" Riley, now bro called me the model for what the yapper should aspire to be here. Yeah, exactly. Everyone should be yapping more. I mean, not quite, Riley. Some of your yapping should really come in the form of super chats, but I still appreciate your yapping, so it's all good. We're all good for now. I think that's about it for the major league here in question. Of course, the highlight for the true enthusiasts who are willing to deal with the largest and heaviest devices, that is going to be over 5,000 milliampere hours. Now, if we go actually to the 16 Pro Max here, you will find that that one is absolutely destroying even some devices with full 5,000 milliampere devices, some devices that have like 6,000, some even close to 7,000 milliampere devices. So giving this device more efficient components, roughly 8 to 9% larger battery, is definitely very, very promising. That being said, we are definitely not done yet with the leaks. Let's actually start with something small and something slightly confusing, the way that 9to5Mac chose to package that leak. And that is that there is apparently an anonymous X account. I don't know if they mean that their account is basically private and they only connect it to like news sites like 9to5Mac, but I definitely don't know this account. They definitely don't leak this, but this the account basically confirming that Series 11, Ultra 3, and Apple Watch SE 3 are coming all with the upcoming S11 processor, which should be very similar to the S10 and S9, which wouldn't be the biggest leap for the Series 11, obviously. Because the Series 10 already had the S10. It would be an okay leap for the Ultra 3 because the Ultra 2 didn't get an update last year. And of course, it would be a much bigger leap for the Apple Watch SE 3 because the current Apple Watch SE 2 is powered by a much older processor. So that to me makes sense. The nature of this leak doesn't make too much sense to me, but yeah, I like this commenting on basically one part of the article saying, this anonymous X account wishes to remain private, so we can't directly link to the tweet, though the user has a highly accurate track record, which this wouldn't surprise me if this is a YouTube-based leaker, basically. So we know, obviously, that Apple posts their events on Twitter, on YouTube, before those go live, so that YouTube can process them and then they can just click one button and the event goes live for everyone. But I wonder, like, leaking through Twitter but not making it public, to me just seems like at that point you shouldn't really tweet it, but you should just send a direct message to journalists. And yeah, the comment here said it perfectly. Is this the dumbest sentence ever posted on the site? The account is posting on Twitter. What do you mean? Wishes to remain private. Which again, it could be an anonymous account, but private, that kind of clashes with the entire concept of social media. Um, Benvini saying, I heard Apple wouldn't show new iPhone, just new color for iPhone 16 lineup. Well, I'm sure there will be some ex-leakers who will tell you anything you can even imagine. And that's obviously just one leak here. There's also one leak in the same kind of unpredictable way. And that is that supposedly there might be an iPad Pro. Now, from everything that I've heard, and this is why I put it this way in the title, because I didn't want to clickbait you guys. So, I should have probably put a question mark on top of it. But basically I said M5 iPad Pro in October. Well, and please don't hang me for this, there might be a chance it's coming tomorrow, which would of course be insane, but also not entirely unimaginable. I mean, the M4 iPad Pro had a pretty random M5 release last year, and what's funny is that this will now be exactly 10 years since the September 9th introduction of the original iPad Pro. Which came out in 2015. That was actually my first iPad Pro, the first 12.9-inch iPad, the first iPad with USB 3 transfer speeds. To a lot of people saying Lightning is USB 2, that's bullshit. Lightning was USB 2 on iPhones, and that was just Apple's choice. Lightning had a USB 3 option on iPad Pros ever since 2015, so don't for a moment think that Lightning is inherently technologically limited. Yes, it has fewer pins than USB-C, so if you give them the same like PCIe lanes, probably Lightning would underperform USB-C, but then again, you could just give it more PCIe lanes if you chose to. Riley saying, and that is now entirely your opinion, Riley. I completely disavow this one, but I'll read it out saying, the iPad that ruins the MacBook Air chip announcement for me. Not for me. I know it might for you. I entirely disagree. I think the iPad is Apple's best product in a way. I think it's the one that appeals to me the most in real life. I think it's the one that outside of the iPhone, which yes is a game-changing product in general, kind of just follows me through my life the most. Yes, Apple Watch is on me. Yes, EarPods are in my ears. I'm not stupid. AirPods, sorry. I just said it because I literally have EarPods in my ears, not AirPods. By the way, wouldn't it be cool if Apple just occasionally updated these? Like, sure, I know that they made them USB-C, and I'm very grateful for that because I'm using them this way right now. But I'm just curious, could we not get like a $40 version that I could use during my streams? Do I really have to like resort to AirPods Max to have a wired connection and still use Apple tech? But that's a completely different discussion. So M5 iPad Pro. First, a highly reputable leaker with an anonymous X account posted twice in succession last night. The two posts included device details for the M5 iPad Pro line, 11 and 13-inch models and Wi-Fi and cellular configs, and the new Apple Watch lineup, which is obviously the rumor we've covered just a few minutes ago here. I found the timing of these posts curious. Now, this is not my commentary. This is the commentary from 9 to 5 Mac. Since they arrived right on the cusp of Apple's big September 9 event. Additionally, the Apple Watch products are almost certainly launching at that event, which make me think the new iPad Pros might be too. And this is where they obviously come up with the reference to the September 9, 2015 reveal of the original iPad Pro. I fully understand that. I would say that because of iPad's more like 18-month timeline versus the 12-month timeline of iPhones, it makes it very much possible that that one can be updated at basically every moment. And without more Macs to potentially be shown in October, I wonder if Apple would want to have the M5 iPad Pro inside an event so they can actually talk more about the processor, right? Because if there are no new Macs next month, then this doesn't become an iPad event. This not that only becomes, at least in my opinion, it only becomes a press release, an Apple newsroom release for this new iPad. So would Apple potentially maybe pull the iPad announcement a little bit forward to say iPadOS 26 is coming in 1.5 weeks, as is the new iPad. It has double the base memory, 16 gigabytes, just like your Macs. It now means it's perfectly ready for your new windowing system inside iPadOS 26. It's better for more advanced multitasking. And guess what? On top of a better chip, maybe M5 finally moves to 12 GPU cores, right? Which the iPhone moved from 5 GPU cores to 6, but the M series chips have not yet moved from 10 GPU cores to 12 on the base chips. Maybe it gets that, and maybe it also gets better cooling. Don't forget, the M4 iPad Pro introduced more advanced graphene cooling sheets or heat distribution sheets and a copper Apple logo to improve cooling capacity of the M4 or iPad Pro versus the previous M2 iPad Pro. Now think about that for the M5 iPad Pro, right? Maybe just to go all in on vapor chambers, Apple is currently, because I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if down the road we also get vapor chambers inside MacBooks. If Apple plans to make the M6 MacBook Pro thinner without significantly compromising other components, they will need a new cooling system inside there, unless they're willing to just use the efficiency of 2 nanometer, but not the extra performance, which is very doubtful. So there is a chance that this iPad gets a new chip and a new cooling system, and then it's just advertised around iPadOS 26. And then in comparison to that, now an M3 iPad Air is definitely worth a lot less, right? My iPad shows stream issues. Wait, what? Oh, okay. It was just it was just the YouTube app. Guys, did you have any problems here? Benvin saying, how do I watch your tomorrow's live? Do I have two windows open, one for Apple and your channel? Can you show the event? No, I cannot show the event. This is, by the way, why my M4 streams thus far are my biggest streams on this channel. We had close to 200 people watching live, because those were not events, but those were press releases. Those were Apple newsroom releases. And I was able to basically react to the press release within an hour of those press releases being made. Even though I was on vacation, I actually really bothered to make it work. Right? So unfortunately, with a live event that has music, that has Apple copyrights, by the way, even their ads. I was streaming a PlayStation, a State of Play once for you guys, which meant 2 people were watching. And just for a joke, I showed you in the middle of the stream, like an Apple ad that had come out, right? Or even an older ad that we just were mentioning in the discussion. And what happened was that event was actually flagged not for copyright music or video from the PlayStation stream, but it was actually flagged for Apple's ad that was 2 minutes of a almost 3-hour stream. And it wasn't even for like music in that ad, right? Because if that ad had included like some really copyrighted music, I would have understood it more. But no, it was literally just, oh, it's Apple's content. And I'm like, gee, Apple, please forgive me for showing an ad of yours for free. I guess fuck me, right? Yeah, but M5 iPad Pro might come. Again, this is the same source as the Apple Watch. If the Apple Watch leak was actually something substantially new, I would be paying even more attention to this. But just saying, oh, we're getting Apple Watch SE 3, Series 11, Apple Watch Ultra 3, those are not surprising reveals by any means to me. So, however, if this turns out to be true, well, granted, this account didn't even say that M5 iPad Pros are coming tomorrow, and we kind of know that they're coming either this month or next month. So, but if they really happen tomorrow, then I think in the future we'll have to pay more attention to this anonymous Twitter account where it's not anonymous in the sense that it doesn't have a real name attached to it. It's apparently so anonymous that it cannot be linked to, which is so insane. Or are people saying, I want them to keep cranking out these crazy powerful iPads so I can get them used. Not sure why they keep doing this, but if it means I can get an M4 13-inch iPad Pro at a steep discount to get rid of the old ones, I'll take it. That's exactly why they're doing this. I don't understand why people have this obsession with like, oh, iPads don't need M4. Oh, iPads don't need M5. Don't forget, M4, M5, these chips have other advantages than just their raw performance. They are more efficient. They are built on newer architecture. They are built on newer nodes. They will get longer software support. They have support for faster, newer memory, which again comes with other benefits like more performance, sure, but also higher efficiency. But also logistically, maybe that's just the memory they've ordered now. So it's better to use that one, and why pair new memory with an old chip, potentially having to downclock that memory so it can even work with the memory controller on the old processor, if you can just combine a new processor and new memory and use that as an advertising point. Make sure the iPad performs better in games. Make sure apps open instantly. Make sure that the new windowing system performs smoothly on iPadOS 26. So, yeah. This would be insane if that happens, because that means we would have an event with iPhones, Apple Watches, iPads, and yes, AirPods, because AirPods Pro 3 are very, very likely coming tomorrow. And here we actually have more tweets actually to go through. I'm getting some messages apparently, but this is now coming from Minchi Kuo, and when it comes to AirPods Pro, he is saying Apple is expected to launch AirPods Pro 3 in the second half of 2025, while a more significant hardware upgrade, which again, it entirely depends on how you actually define significant. Honestly, I think this leak is not that significant, but okay. But basically, there will be a hardware upgrade beyond the upgrade that we're supposedly getting tomorrow, and that upgrade might include an IR camera. So this is now, in my opinion, really contradicting some misunderstanding that Mark Gurman has had with his own coverage of AirPods updates. Mark Gurman said that Apple would use cameras in AirPods for Apple Intelligence, for visual intelligence, to analyze your surroundings, to feed their AI, to give you an AI experience, to make it work even together with like Vision Pro and whatever. This was always bullshit in my opinion. I mean, think about it. With just the way AirPods sit in your ears, where is like the camera half the time posting? Like you would get your cheek in the frame, like if you're having it like this, or it's just looking into the entirely different direction. No, there was always a better explanation, which is that these models would get cameras, true, but it would not be a standard RGB camera. It would be an infrared camera, basically recording the area around your face, and these sensors could be used similar to what the Vision Pro allows you to do, to interact with objects in the virtual space with just your hands. For that, it uses cameras. For that, it uses LiDAR. For that, it uses infrared. Well, this one would allow you to, instead of clicking on your AirPods, instead of swiping on your AirPods, it would instead allow you to swipe in the air, up and down, forwards, backwards, right? Potentially give you much better control. Again, it depends on how well it works over your media, and give you simply more controls than that simple swipe up and down area allows on the current AirPods Pro. If Apple especially combines those things, if they give you both the stem with the actual touch target, touch area, but also IR cameras, that would be an insane gain in usability. However, it could also mean that Apple gets rid of the stem mostly, or gets rid of the touch area on the stem. So we aren't entirely sure. When we look at how, for example, Mac Rumors is treating that, so first of all, people are saying this might be AirPods Pro 4. True, this could also be AirPods Pro 3, but with a different control mechanism, but with everything else being the same. H3 chip, same audio quality, same transparency mode, same noise cancellation quality. We obviously have a precedent for that, with AirPods Pro 2 being the same between the Lightning version and the USB-C version, except for low latency connection to Apple Vision Pro. And supposedly this one wouldn't even be like a model that entirely replaces the model that we have right now, but they could coexist, and it could become a higher end version, basically giving you more versatility with how you interact with it over the standard AirPods Pro 3. We also have a precedent for that, because when you look at the base AirPods, there is the difference between the version that has MagSafe or not. We can go to Apple's website briefly, just to make sure that I'm not mistaking myself. AirPods 4. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait, no. They are differentiated by MagSafe, but there is a model for $129 without active noise cancellation, and then there's a model for $179 with active noise cancellation, but there are more features in that version, right? Next level immersion, take a closer look. I think wireless charging, but not MagSafe, is available on that more expensive version. God, I really hope that the smaller case that's supposedly coming to the AirPods Pro 3 is not exclusive. It's not gonna fuck up Qi 2 charging. Yeah, new wireless options for AirPods Pro 4 with active noise cancellation. You can recharge the case using an Apple Watch charger or a Qi certified charger. Okay, so it still charges over MagSafe and Qi 2. It just doesn't magnetically connect to Qi 2 or MagSafe. With magnets, it only connects to the AirPods to the Apple Watch charger. Good. We now have that out of the way as well. Guys, we have quite a few people watching. If you're enjoying this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider liking the video. Hit the notification bell. That way you actually know tomorrow when I'm going live. I'm either starting tomorrow at 6 p.m., so an hour before the Apple event, or half an hour before the Apple event. Depends a little bit on how I plan my day tomorrow. I would probably like to start an hour early. That's just the best for the algorithm. Then it's roughly a 2-hour event, and then it's at least an hour after discussion. So tomorrow is going to be quite a long stream, 3.5 to maybe even 4.5 hours, depending on how crazy it gets. If the iPad is in there, it could really go over 4 hours. So hit the notification bell to be informed. If you want to support me directly, and this would really mean a lot to me, you can do so whenever you catch me live with super chats and super stickers. Every donation goes a long way, so I can spend more time with you guys, watching videos, reacting to content, creating my own content from the ground up, obviously. Beyond all that, you can also become a supporter right here on YouTube as a channel member, or a supporter over on Patreon. There are a few different tiers, so people of different income groups might be able to do so. Again, nobody's forced, just watching, just liking. It all helps tremendously. You will also find, if you scroll to the beginning of the live chat today, there's the link to the Discord. Please consider joining that Discord. It's very lively. It's where we have a lot of discussions. It's a small but engaged community. So if you could do that, that would really mean a lot to me. So supposedly new AirPods Pro 3 tomorrow, but no 3-year wait for the next generation AirPods or the AirPods Pro 3.5, supposedly AirPods Pro 3 with IR cameras and with it air gestures in 2026, and maybe those come with a higher price point. Now, given we don't actually know the price of the AirPods Pro 3, given I wouldn't be surprised if European pricing actually stays relatively stable, because the euro has actually had quite a good run versus the dollar. It's almost 9% up over the last 2 years. So if this one stays 250, yeah, I could see the air gesture models being 280, but then again, I could also this one moving up to like 270, and then the air gesture models being around 300. So, but this is now purely speculative. We don't have any clear rumors. Apple does not set prices this far in advance. There's so much that can and will still happen in the meantime with world logistics, world economics, tariffs, currency fluctuations, potentially wars. Who fucking knows? So yeah, we will know the price of the regular AirPods Pro 3 tomorrow, and from that I think we'll be able to speculate what's the most likely price is going to be for AirPods Pro 3 plus air gestures. Yeah, that's about it for the different hardware that we can expect tomorrow, right? New AirPods, but just the AirPods Pro 3. Obviously, AirPods 4 have been out for a little bit, but once Apple updates the base AirPods with the H3 chip, I don't think that that will happen right away. I think they will leave some time between AirPods Pro 3 and what is going to become AirPods 5. Maybe an M5 iPad Pro if we are really lucky, even though it will kill Ben Venice's excitement about the M5 MacBook Air supposedly. Sorry, it will kill Riley's excitement. Jesus, guys, now you're confusing me. You master yappers. A new Apple Watch lineup with Apple Watch SE 3, Series 11, and Apple Watch Ultra 3. And of course, iPhone 17, 17 Air, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max, all coming with either larger batteries than expected, or just simply larger batteries, and in a unique twist with different battery capacities between models that still maintain a physical SIM card tray. That's most likely models sold in China and a lot of the developing world, and models that come as eSIM only. That's it's definitely the United States, but hopefully also other well economically developed countries, Western world countries, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, whatever, right? Basically the European Union. Not that I don't want other people to get access to devices with more batteries, right? If you live in China, I would love for you to be able to get an iPhone with more battery. Especially look here, the 17 Pro. Even between these versions, right? That's 4252 divided by 3988, right? That's a 6.6% increase in just the capacity between these. Obviously, if you then look at over the 16 Pro, now we're looking at an 18% gain. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. Let me look if my stream is stable, functioning well. Yeah, seems all to be doing okay. Guys, so as always, let me know if the audio and video quality is doing all right for you. I had thought of maybe reacting to the Pixel 10 Pro XL video by Zone of Tech, but honestly, I'm not sure if I have either the interest or the voice to actually do that, right? I don't want to like exhaust my voice before tomorrow's stream. Ducky boy, haven't seen you in a while. Hello. You missed actually quite a lot. You missed battery capacity discussions. You missed the confirmation of the entire Apple Watch family. You've missed the possibility of the M5 iPad Pro coming tomorrow rather than next month. And you've missed a rumor about an AirPods Pro 3 version that's not even coming this year, but next year. Well, we're still getting AirPods Pro 3 tomorrow. So maybe you'll check out the stream afterwards. But we do actually have more. First, it's something really basic. When it comes to the new iPhone accessories, we've heard, of course, that there would be this body strap. This is it. This is it in orange, basically kind of confirming that orange will be a major thing on this year's iPhones. Whether it's actually, well, this might be called orange, but whether that means the 17 Pro is going to be called orange, that remains to be seen, right? Because obviously Apple might have better names for that. Copper, gold. I mean, last year they called it Desert Titanium. Granted, that was a very different shade of color, but still, right? Apple knows how to come out with pretty names. Next is actually not a leak or rumor, but it's a speed test. And that's because we know that the iPhone 17 Air is going to inherit the Apple in-house design C1 modem from the iPhone 16e. So we do have some carrier tests based on that. This is comparing the iPhone 16e versus the base iPhone 16. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon X71. So that's, of course, 2 to almost now 3 generations behind the latest and greatest that Qualcomm has to offer. You see that the median 5G download speeds for the iPhone 16 were still faster than the 16e. That's 317 versus 252. However, on an unspecified Spanish network, it said that the 16e achieved a median 5G download speed of 139 versus the iPhone 16's 110. So it definitely varies depending on the carrier you use, the network itself, and I also want to make one thing clear. The antenna implementation and everything else of the 17 Air is most likely not going to be the same as the 16e. The 16e is Apple's cheap iPhone. So while the 17 Air is going to be a thin device and compromised in many ways, I wouldn't actually bet on the C1 always being the main limitation here, but maybe it's the antenna system of the 16e being less premium than something that you get on an iPhone Pro or soon on an iPhone Air. Ducky Boy is saying, do you know what odd dropping hints at? People are saying it's basically about the thinness of the 17 Air. Like, it's not like there's that much else. Like, I mean, I don't know if there's any kind of like deep English language reference that I'm losing out on there. But yeah, to me, I think it's basically jaw-dropping or awe-inspiring together. And the only thing that I think would make somebody's jaw drop or inspire somebody's awe is the thinness of the iPhone 17 Air. That's not to say that to me, for example, the battery life of the Pro and Pro Max will not be awe-dropping, right? But honestly, I just think Apple is saying these are the best iPhones we've ever made, minus the battery life of the Air versus the previous Plus. Please ignore that one. But beyond that, better battery life, better cooling, new Wi-Fi modems, for some devices even in-house Apple 5G modems, new chips, new cooling to actually make those work well. With it, potentially brighter screens and just more internal space for the pros could also mean better speakers, better haptics, better microphones. We already have, of course, a camera control, action button, all of that, like big versatility in usage. And I think Apple is just going to say this is the best iPhone we've ever made, which, I mean, it better be, right? Especially considering that we might see at least a small price increase. But just trying to tell you, yeah, don't overthink it. Just as I always tell people to not overthink the colors. I mean, if we are looking here at I forgot whether I had natural scrolling on or off. But yeah, like for example, the colors here, to me, they either mean nothing because blue and orange is a very popular color combination, and I'll show you why soon. But it could also mean that the 17 Pro is coming in a new blue and a new orange slash copper slash gold color, again, whatever Apple ends up calling that. But it could literally just be that movie posters blue orange. So because those are very nicely contrasting colors, you'll find that blue and orange are actually used quite a lot in movie posters, or at least they used to, like 10, 15 years ago. So sometimes shit just happens for purely aesthetical reasons. Now, this is purely orange. This is not really blue and orange. Like this one, for example, is better because at least it uses like Brave's orange color with a blue background. Then you have, of course, like the Dark Knight with the Batman logo in fire, right? Maybe that was the only reason why Apple made the Apple logo this way. And maybe they called it awe-dropping just because it was in their eyes, a cool twist on, like, again, awe-inspiring and jaw-dropping. So it could mean a lot, it could mean nothing. Ultimately, we'll see it all in less than 24 hours at this point, and that's probably what's the most important thing about it. There is also one rumor actually about the iPhone 18, and I think Ben Vinny, you talked about potentially waiting for the iPhone 18 series. So Apple actually, and this is pretty official, they've even talked about it with, I believe, with Trump. But because Apple is doing all of these large-scale investments across the United States, they obviously need to partner with companies because Apple does not build their own factories in that way, right? Foxconn assembles iPhones. TSMC builds Apple's chips. Sony builds Apple's camera sensors. Samsung and LG build Apple's displays, right? So in that context, Apple actually mentioned that they are working together with Samsung on basically a never before seen imaging technology. And the chips in question are supposedly 3-layer stacked image sensors, which enable higher pixel density, which I don't think Apple would care about that much, and improved low light performance, which Apple definitely would care about, by vertically stacking multiple sensor layers. Which I find it funny that this seemingly is the biggest trend in technology right now, because we cannot make transistors really much smaller, or even pixels much smaller these days. What we resort to is often stacking the tech we already have on top of each other. We have like 3D chip stacking, for example, for AMD's 3D V-Cache on processors. We have Apple doing tandem OLED by doing basically 2 emissive OLED layers on top of each other. Now we have multiple sensor layers, supposedly for smartphone sensors, so that could be cool. But supposedly this technology is not going to be used in 2026, but rather some point in 2027. What can I say, right? It's always the case with basically every rumor, and I tell you that, guys, every time, that a rumor might not be false, and Apple might even be technically working on new tech for like next year's iPhone, or at least the model after that. But Apple, in the backs of their minds, always knows, well, even a 2 or 3 month delay in developing this technology could result in having us to push it into an iPhone model that comes out a year later. Now, maybe with the existence of the 18e and supposedly the iPhone 18 not actually coming late next year, but early the year after, we could actually see like more variety in when Apple launches specifically which new tech. So it wouldn't necessarily always be 12 month gaps, but some would be 6 month gaps. That being said, the fact that Apple says they're working with Samsung, and for that they're building new factories and everything, that could mean, oh, this could be delayed by the actual technology not being ready. This could be delayed by the factory not being ready. This could be delayed by Apple's image pipeline not being ready for this sensor. So, yeah, whether it's coming 2026, early 2027, it could be delayed further. That's why I encourage you to take all leaks and rumors with a pinch of salt. But yeah, I just couldn't keep it in me. It made me chuckle because I think that the title here is actually quite great, which is iPhone 18 rumors becomes iPhone 19 rumor 2 days before iPhone 17. And I just thought that was very funny. If we go to Twitter, you'll actually find the original leak here by Minchi Kuo, because it's the same source here. Update: Samsung's shipment for iPhone CIS, that's the underlying camera technology, is later than expected, with mass volume likely postponed until 2027. The ultra-wide CIS supplied by Samsung is expected to be adopted in first and mid to low-end iPhone models. So if we take that that late 2026 is when the iPhone 18 is iPhone 18 Pro, iPhone Folder coming out. Well, now it means that Apple is supposedly targeting this 1/2.6-inch sensor, which isn't even, to be honest, that great, because the current Apple ultra-wide sensor is 1/255, but whatever. I don't even know if that far in advance Minchi Kuo would really know this, but again, take all of this with a grain of salt, I guess. But basically, that could also mean now it comes to the iPhone 18, which the base model is not coming late 2026. It's coming early to mid 2027, as is the iPhone 18e. So this is most likely what Minchi Kuo is referencing. Once again, take it all with a lot of salt. And try to not die of that sodium intake. But I'm just trying to give you as detailed of an understanding of a very small and for now pretty flimsy rumor, because it's not like we don't know that Apple is working on this technology. We know they're literally helping Samsung for that factory and everything. It's just that whether it means late 2026, early 2027, late 2027, those details are always in flux. And yes, in fact, when we are talking specifically about like a 1/2.6-inch sensor, well, maybe that one is actually specifically designed for the mid to low-end iPhone models, while maybe the iPhone Pros could actually get the same underlying 3-stack camera technology, just with significantly more, just with a larger sensor, right? Ducky's saying, or it represents heat, and I think the phones are getting a new cooling tech. Yeah, now you're talking about the logo here. It could mean too, right? It looks like the Predator sees the world, right? Like through infrared. But again, that's why I'm saying it could mean a lot. Because simultaneously, would Apple really want to show you heat right? Because ideally, an iPhone that's well cooled would kind of only have cold, which I know is, of course, absurd. That's not how good any passive cooling technology is, much less one that's still inside the smartphone. But yeah, so again, you can overanalyze this. We are now how many hours away? We can actually check again on Mac Rumors. We are now 23 hours, 31 minutes, and oh, now we have the second timer on as well. And 23 hours, 30 minutes, and 59 seconds. Looks like there's not much else. There's supposedly an interesting Xiaomi 16 series leak. This is for the Xiaomi 16 Pro Max, which, yes, they are copying Apple's branding scheme one-to-one, but supposedly they're using a big display on the back here, so that would help you with recording selfies. Supposedly, yes, in fact, we have this huge elongated camera island to what this looks, of course, very similar to what's going to happen on the iPhone 17 Pro, but funnily enough, the LED flash is not inside the camera island, as is not an ultra wide sensor. So this is like a telephoto and the main camera sensor. But then because of the display, they actually still had to put other camera components down here, which is absolutely insane to me. I'm not complaining. I've said time and time again that I actually appreciate when people copy Apple, but then really put their own unique twist on it. Samsung in recent years has been so disappointing to me because Samsung copies Apple, but then doesn't put a unique twist on it. And Chinese software has been disappointing to me because they just copy Apple, and then they make like more of it. Like, for example, they copied a lot of them Dynamic Island, and they allow you to swipe inside their Dynamic Island through like different widgets, which to me, while it's not a bad idea, it also a little bit defeats the point of a Dynamic Island, which is kind of supposed to be very immediate, and you're supposed to touch it actually very little. I mean, you kind of don't even want to get like the camera there too dirty, or in Apple's case also like the Face ID sensors. So you kind of are supposed only to occasionally tap on it or swipe on it. But when it comes to Chinese manufacturers' hardware, look, is it going to be very inspired by the 17 Pro? Sure, and some people might say, well, but they're coming out simultaneously. Yeah, these people have known about the iPhone 17's design for longer than we have, believe me. But yeah, when it comes to putting a display in there, well, it's not the most unique idea. Hey, if they still manage heat well, if the cameras are still decent, maybe they could even do some very special flash on there, right? Like maybe a flash that completely matches the ambient color temperature in your room. That would be a cool idea for a display on the back. That's kind of like using the front display as a flash for when you're taking selfies in the dark on iPhones. So again, not trying to actually down talk this. I actually think this is quite cool. There's also another Huawei. I actually don't know what Huawei's phones are even called these days. It's like P Ultra something, dual telephoto. I think that was basically the rumor that I've seen very news. Yeah, Pura 80, right? Change to English. Why MSN? Huawei Central. Maybe here. Huawei Pure 80 Ultra's dual switchable telephoto camera. Here's how it works. So you can see that this camera arrangement actually has two optical systems inside here, right? Which would lead you to believe, well, maybe it has two telephoto cameras inside here. And that is correct. but it's done much differently than, for example, how Samsung has two fully separate cameras. One a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, and then one a 50 megapixel 5x telephoto. Well, this one supposedly has Jesus Christ, has a 3.7x optical zoom camera inside there and a 9.4x optical zoom. By the way, I give some respect for the choices in zoom range. While I think 9.4x is going a bit too far, and I would have preferred maybe just a rounded up 4x and 8x. But yeah, we basically have two optical systems that converge on the end, and then both address the same sensor, which is actually going to be a very large 1/1.28-inch sensor, which is the same size as what the iPhone Pro uses for its main camera. So that's a big step forward in technology. Now, again, could there be some other compromises because of this complicated optical system? Sure, but this is why I'm trying to tell you always that competition is ultimately good for us. And to me, I would prefer to see Huawei, Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo. I would prefer to see those companies punished for when they do egregious copying of like Apple software, sometimes Apple's entire design language, all obviously if they steal some intellectual property. But I wouldn't want these companies to disappear, because I think without them, we are kind of screwed, and Apple would probably be charging anywhere from 20%, which is pretty much a guarantee, to double the current price of iPhones, right? So trying to always tell you, keep out your eyes for more stuff that's happening on the market beyond Apple. Be excited for other stuff. Try to encourage other reviewers to cover and actually understand the technology. Don't just let them get away with saying, oh, these guys do that. No, a good reviewer should actually have some basic understanding of what's going on. Now, Huawei, to me, is the least interesting, because Huawei is just, because of all the legal worries that they have on Western markets, they don't have full Android, so that makes them pretty useless for how I want to use a smartphone. But when it comes to raw technology, I think there are still interesting things happening from Huawei, and now Honor, which was like a daughter company of Huawei, now is more independent to avoid the same like legal problems as Huawei had. Yeah, and I just wanted to show you there's other things to be excited about than just Apple tech. And while I know that I've probably just lost half of my live viewership by starting to talk about non-Apple technology, it still means a lot to me, because to be able to cover this at all, because obviously tomorrow and the days following that, I will not be able to provide you non-Apple coverage. So this was a small little preview for you guys into the world of competitor technology. Don't get fooled. Sometimes Apple stuff is still the best. And maybe it's integrated the very best, but it doesn't mean there isn't stuff that's close to it. And let's be honest, in some cases better. You might not love the color processing on Xiaomi devices, and you might not like pretty much anything at all about Huawei, but sometimes we have to give credit where it's due. To have such a versatile zoom camera combined with such a large camera sensor, that's pretty neat and deserves some respect from us. That being said, I think we are pretty much done here, since I doubt that there's any leaks and rumors here. So this is just people summarizing all the stuff that I have been talking about today. Yep, nothing new here. Again, if we look at Mac rumors, this is the same C1 modem test, and just the clock running down. Now we are 23 hours and 22 minutes and 18 seconds away from tomorrow's event. Expect me to start streaming either at 6 p.m. German time, so an hour before the stream, or half an hour before the stream. That would be 6:30. Of course, join the Discord. I will, as always, post the actual link in there and the timing. Hit the notification bell. That way, you don't even have to wait for me to say it. You'll just automatically know it once I put it into YouTube. And I might not ask you this much to tell me what you would like to see me cover next, because I know the answer is going to be very much Apple's odd-dropping iPhone event tomorrow. That's going to be all the hardware that Apple announces there. And then going forward, that will also include even maybe some review of iOS 26. Maybe I will wait for like a month until iOS 26 launches, and maybe by like iOS 26.1 I would give you like a review in like late October, early November or something like that. So plenty for you to look forward to. Of course, I'm planning on buying the new iPhone 17 Pro Max. I'm planning on buying the AirPods Pro 3. So we'll have a lot to discuss, a lot to unbox on this channel. I hope you guys are excited for that. I'm very excited to experience all of that with you together. Thank you so much. And then I guess I'll see you tomorrow. For now, you get a little bit of Big Mark just to keep all the master yappers here. But also, Mark is tuning out.